Well, I've already said it a couple of times. Stop, look, and listen. Do you remember the first time that you might have ever heard those words used together, stop, look, and listen? I remember the first time I heard it, and I was in kindergarten. And I remember my kindergarten teacher teaching us that that's what you did when you crossed the street. You had to be very careful, and you had to stop, look, and listen. Well, I taught that to my kids. It didn't work, okay? They just ran on out anyway. But stop, look, and listen has been an important phrase for me my entire life. It's helped me as I've reached certain points in my journey to stop and look and listen, and especially in my spiritual life. Those three words help me to stop and to look and to listen. What is God is doing in my life? Where is God moving with me and for me and around me? In our gospel today from Matthew, as I was reading that very familiar story about the wise men, I realized that the wise men were journeying in that same pattern of stop, look, and listen. They were following the star in the east from Persia all the way over to Jerusalem, and that star stopped over Jerusalem. And those wise men, knowing that if they were going to find a newborn king, where else would they go but to a palace where the king would be? And they went to the palace of King Herod. And when they knocked on the doors and they were escorted in and they asked where the newborn king was, Herod was quite disturbed. Herod was threatened. Now, I'm imagining this a little bit, but I can see Herod ushering those wise men into a room as he goes and meets with his chief priests and scribes to discover, well, where does it say in the scriptures that a newborn king is to be born? And I can see those wise men in another room looking around, looking, discerning. What's going on here? Why is Herod upset? And when Herod returns, he tells the wise men, indeed, a new king is to be born, but not in Jerusalem, to Bethlehem. And I want you, wise men, to go to Bethlehem to find the newborn king and then come back to tell me where he is so that I may go and pay my respects. And the wise men listened to Herod and went to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, they came to the house where Mary was with the infant baby Jesus. And when they looked upon his face, they knelt down, for in their hearts they knew they were in the presence of God. They listened to their heart. They knew that they were in the presence of God. It's important for us to listen to our hearts. And as I was thinking about the sermon today, I thought it would be helpful for us to get started on our journey in this new year. And part of that would be to help us reflect on what it means to stop and look and listen for a moment to our own lives. Stop and look and listen to our own lives. So you have a sheet. I hope does everyone have a blue sheet? Because you're going to need a blue sheet. Does everyone have one? Because ushers, if they don't, I need you to go grab them. Does everyone have a blue sheet? Okay. What I've done is I prepared some questions. I really prepared them for myself, but I prepared them for you as well as a way that we're going to go through these kind of as a prayer. We're not going to talk about them. We're not going to talk to each other. We're going to go through these as a prayer, asking for reflection, looking for guidance. You may want to close your eyes and put the paper down while I read through these. You may wish to look at them, and if you see one that really speaks to you, make a note by it and go back to it later. But this is to help us on our journey. And the first thing we're going to do on our journey is to stop. To stop and see the beauty of your life. Stop and ask yourself, what is good? What is life-giving? Where have I given Where and when have I received? Stop and ask questions about who I am and how I respond to my community and the world. Am I numb to what is happening around me? Am I fearful? Do I believe it is someone else's responsibility? Do I have an us and them mindset? Do I wonder how I could make a difference? Stop and reflect on exactly what is my heart telling me. Another way to phrase that might be, what do I feel in my gut that I need to do, I want to do, but am afraid to act? Stop and recall, what is it in my life that I am absolutely done, finished, over with? What is it? When do I stop and sit in the presence of God? We want to continue on our journey and look at my life. What is good? What is simmering under the surface? What could explode at any moment? Is there any unresolved grief I need to feel? Unresolved guilt? Unreconciled relationships? Look at the world around me. What in the world makes me afraid? Are there people in the world I hold in contempt? Are there people I would not want for my neighbor? Are there those that I feel hatred towards? Take a deep look inward. Is there a disconnect in how I feel and live on the inside, my interior life, and the life that I live on the outside, my exterior life? Am I living a life that is fully integrated or one that is separate and disconnected? And if I am living a disconnected life, am I hiding? Am I wearing a mask for others to see? And if I am, what is that about? Take a long look at what takes life and energy away from you. Do I stop and look for God? And now we move to listening. Listen. Who do you listen to? This can be a person. It can be a preacher, a radio or television personality, a blogger, a website. How do I feel after I have listened to this person? Do I feel peace or anxiety, joy or depression? Do I feel hope or hopeless, apathetic or angry? And what voices do I listen to? The voice of reason or recklessness? The voice of peace or violence? The voice of forgiveness or judgment? The voice of shame or grace? Do I listen for other voices? Can I even hear them? Voices that say, this is not who you are. Voices that cry out for justice. Silent voices that scream out to be heard. Voices that are different from mine. Can I listen to them? Can I hear them? Can I honor them? Can I join my voice with theirs? Do I stop, look, and listen for God? And when I do, how am I different? Is this something I want to do regularly next year? Is this something I want to do regularly next year? On entering the house, the wise men saw the child with his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. When we stop and we look and we listen, we encounter the very presence of God. And friends, our lives are forever changed. The wise men left that manger and they went back to Persia. They went back on a different route. They no longer heard the voice of Herod. They didn't do what Herod said. They did what was in their hearts, and they went back to proclaim that they had indeed encountered the living God. In one of my daily devotionals last week, I read this from Franciscan priest Richard Rohr. Rohr writes, "Both God's truest identity and our own true self are love." So why isn't it obvious? Why can't we see it in ourselves? And why can't we see God? How do we find what is supposedly already there? How do we find what is supposedly already there? Why should we need to awaken our deepest and most profound selves? And how do we do it? By praying and meditating? By more silence, solitude, and the sacraments? Yes, all of these. But the most important way is to live and fully accept our present reality. To live and fully accept where we are when times are good and when times are so difficult. When we feel extreme joy and when we feel extreme sorrow, God's presence is with us. The greatest teacher of God's presence in our life is our lives. The greatest teacher of God's presence in our lives is our very own life. But we have to stop. And we have to look. And we have to listen. In John's Gospel, chapter 1, 10th verse, the writer writes, "He was in the world, and the world came into being through him. Yet the world did not know him." They could not stop. They did not look. They did not listen. He came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. They could not stop. They could not look. They could not listen. But to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God. My friends, when those wise men knelt down at the manger, they weren't Jewish men. They were Gentile men from Persia. And yet they encountered the presence of God. What is scandalous in our world is that the person Jesus came for, the people, the Jewish people, they couldn't see it. Not all of them, but the majority, the ones that were in power, had too much to lose. And friends, we do too. When we don't stop, and we don't look, and we don't listen. God is with us. God is with us. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.